Hi there, my name is Bob Plankers. I'm a Senior Technical Marketing Architect at VMware, and it is my pleasure, in fact it's my privilege, to walk through what's new in vSphere 7 Update 2, the technical overview. I guess I'm rhyming a lot. I'll cut it out. Let's get moving. vSphere 7, we released it in April 2020 and it was huge. Introduced quite a number of new features and took vSphere in some new directions as well. It was truly the best version of vSphere available when it was released. Update 1 was released in October 2020. That improved on vSphere. It made modern workloads more accessible and made those modern workloads easy to operate as well with vSphere with Tanzu. vSphere 7 Update 2 is currently the best version of vSphere available. And it continues our goals of making infrastructure that's technologically advanced, but also easy to use and very secure all at the same time. We believe all three of those are achievable simultaneously. Update 2 adds more support for workloads that use persistent memory, for workloads that use GPUs, and for new CPUs, including the advanced security features that are found on the AMD EPYC line of CPUs. We're making it even easier to deliver applications with load balancers and private registries, and we uphold our commitment to helping customers stay current with the upstream Kubernetes releases. vSphere Native Key Provider removes friction and provides some great options for organizations that want to use data at rest protections. And last, improvements to the vSphere Lifecycle Manager make patching and upgrades more seamless. You know, it's really hard to call patching and maintenance exciting, but it's an absolute reality for all of our customers, and VMware's done a lot of good work so that IT staff can get back to their other tasks. So let's get into it. We'll start with vSphere with Tanzu, formerly vSphere with Kubernetes. vSphere 7 Update 2 now ships a fully supported, integrated, highly available, enterprise-ready, the adjectives here, but they're all true, load balancer. This load balancer is available for TKG, Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, and the Kubernetes services themselves. It's fully integrated and it's fully orchestrated, such that when a development team builds it into their application definitions, just in the YAML files, Tanzu will just use it. The developers don't need to understand the infrastructure, and the people that understand the infrastructure, the vSphere admins, now they can deliver a load balancer that scales automatically to match workloads. Making a vSphere admin's life easier, yet the life cycle of all of this stuff is fully managed with the same processes that manage Tanzu, which, not to get too far ahead of myself here, is now vSphere Lifecycle Manager. vSphere with Tanzu made a promise when it was released to keep up with the open source Kubernetes versions. We continue to uphold that. We're delivering Kubernetes 1.19, 1.19 with vSphere 7 Update 2. And this is true for both TKG clusters and the supervisor cluster itself. This lets development teams use the newest features and run the newest applications while still bringing the stability and reliability of vSphere with it. TKG clusters can now use container registries that have self-signed or private certificates. It's done by adding a certificate authority root CA certificate to Tanzu, either at the namespace level or at the individual TKG cluster level if you want per project levels of control and trust. It's a lot of flexibility, a lot of security brought with it here. vSphere 7 Update 1, and yes, Update 1, introduced AMD SEVES support to vSphere. Many of our competitors supported SEV, or Secure Encrypted Virtualization. That's AMD's technology for protecting data while it's stored in a server's memory. The part that makes us unique is support for the ES, the encrypted state, which takes those protections and then drives them further into the CPUs themselves, not just system memory, but CPUs, which, given the last 4 years of hardware security news, some would argue that that's where they're needed the most. VMware had the first commercial support for SEVES. Many hardware security technologies have a real caveat, though, because it essentially keeps secrets from the hypervisor. ESXi can't do things like vMotion anymore. But the secret is that that's fine with Tanzu. Tanzu and Kubernetes don't vMotion anyhow. When a host needs to enter maintenance mode, Tanzu just reinstantiates applications on a new host that isn't in maintenance mode. This makes it a perfect match for AMD SEVES. We call this confidential containers, and confidential containers running on vSphere with Tanzu, they provide full and complete CPU and CPU register. So the CPU registers where data is held inside of the CPUs, and memory isolation and encryption, isolated from other pods, other VMs, and from the hypervisor as well. And it can all be specified just simply as part of the application definition, the YAML file that defines the application. AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning. Huge growth areas, huge areas that vSphere can bring operational simplicity to the workloads themselves. Starting out, our partnership with NVIDIA is looking very bright. vSphere now supports the newest line of NVIDIA GPUs, their Ampere family. The high-end Ampere GPU, the A100, has about double the performance of its predecessor. I tend to say, oh, that's crazy, but in 10 years we'll think about it differently, I'm sure. A feature, though, called Multi-Instance GPU, or MIG, allows workloads to share a GPU, but it's got more isolation in the hardware itself. You might say, hey, Bob, we had this sharing before, and that's true. But the more isolation, it makes it more performance-oriented, more secure. We'll talk about that in just a second. Last, GPU Direct is a method for device-to-device communications. vSphere 7 Update 2 supports this with enhancements to the hypervisor kernel itself called Address Translation Service, or ATS. ATS helps boost performance, distributed training, and or workloads that want to use more than one GPU simultaneously. So speaking of MIG, a multi-instance GPU, it's worth noting a few things about it. You configure it with SR-IOV, just like you did before. But the biggest benefit of MIG, the MIG configurations, it's able to securely share a powerful GPU among different workloads, VMs, cloud tenants, and do so in a really fair and secure way. MIG avoids the noisy neighbor problem, where a greedy workload can consume more GPU than it's entitled to, which is something we've seen in storage as well, the noisy neighbor. You might have seen that term used before. And the greedy or the noisy neighbor problem was a possibility in the older time slicing methods of sharing GPUs. MIG offers these fair slices of GPU to their different tenants and then keeps them separate both inside the GPU itself and also in the data path between the workloads and the GPUs. That's a really powerful difference. vSphere Bitfusion 3.0 has been released as part of this, and Bitfusion is a technology that virtualizes GPUs in a way that makes them accessible remotely. One of the considerations when you're using hardware-based technologies, GPUs and FPGAs and things like that, this is oriented at GPUs, but anytime you're using a piece of hardware that's physically somewhere, well, it's physically somewhere, right? Physically located in a server. And what happens when that server needs to be patched? Well, vSphere 7 Update 1 introduced some support for DRS placement and HA restarts of GPUs, and a lot of goodness there. And that's still disruptive. A restart still requires a planned restart, still requires a vSphere admin to negotiate with application owners for downtime and such. An unplanned restart, well, needs to be recovered, and hopefully that doesn't happen often, but hardware fails at times. Bitfusion virtualizes all of this so that workloads can use pooled GPUs in a very dynamic way. Makes life easier for everyone, helps drive up the utilization of the GPUs as well. Bitfusion 3.0 brings with it some integrated support for more GPU access libraries and APIs. NCCL, which is the NVIDIA libraries for GPU to GPU communication. It also bundles in the ESXi NVIDIA utilities for diagnostics and configuration of GPUs. And as with most product releases, the new version also improves the overall operational experience. We talk to a lot of customers about all of our products and take feedback from you as the customer very seriously. So if you've got something that we can help you with or have a suggestion, please make it. You'll see it show up in a product. Lifecycle. Personally, I do a lot of vSphere security and compliance work in Lifecycle. The ability to patch and upgrade is a huge part of security. We at VMware, we continue to rethink and improve how Lifecycle is handled. I mentioned this early on, but Lifecycle Manager now handles vSphere with Tanzu as well as NSXT Lifecycle support. So pretty much any deployment model for Tanzu is now covered by Lifecycle Manager as well. That's pretty great, actually. You might remember that from vSphere 7, the release there, Lifecycle Manager is really a rethinking of what Update Manager used to be, bringing with it a lot of new functionality and a lot of new ways of doing things. Upgrade planning, automated HCL checks, a declarative model that does a really great job of ensuring the state of ESXi hosts. It's also got integration with hardware firmware management tools like Dell OMI VV or the HP ILO amplifier tools. We support a whole range of those types of tools. I'm just calling Dell and HP out because I can think of them offhand. vSphere clusters live forever, which I've heard is both described both as a blessing and a curse. In fact, I even know of a customer still running a vSphere 4.1 cluster. It's been up for thousands and thousands of days. I don't recommend that. It's actually kind of funny, a little bit mind-boggling. But most normal people, eventually build a new cluster. And some of our customers actually build a lot of new clusters. So helping folks out with new APIs, new installation techniques, is really important to us. To that end, we've added some new capabilities to vCenter Server, the CLIs, and the scripted installs that really help speed deployment and reduce a lot of the follow-up configuration work. As much as we don't like the idea of it, there's really a lot of steps to bringing up a vSphere in a software-defined data center. VMware Cloud Foundation helps that significantly, but at the vSphere level, we've got a small army of user experience designers, UX designers, that really think about how these workflows work, how they're set up, what can we do to improve them. They talk to customers, they talk to lots of people, and they look at this with a real critical eye. And as part of our effort to reduce a vSphere admin's workload, we've added something called the desired image seeding. This allows the use of a reference host for configuration. It's handy for air-gapped environments especially. It really makes it easier to import base images and requisite software depots into environments like that. Last in the LCM section here, suspend a memory. This is a new option that builds on the quick boot functionality so that it can suspend VMs to memory instead of evacuating them. There's a lot of situations where evacuating VMs either takes too long, isn't necessary, or sometimes it isn't even possible. And this feature gives customers that are in those situations some new options. Suspend a memory only works for clusters that use vSphere Lifecycle Manager and for hosts that are compatible with Quick Boot. It needs to be configured by a vSphere admin at the cluster level, so it's a cluster setting. And suspend a memory will check to make sure that there's enough memory to hold the VM. So if you've got an overcommitted memory situation, that might cause this process to fail. If all of that passes, though, the host will restart just the hypervisor kernel itself, not the whole machine, just the hypervisor kernel itself. That's the quick boot process. And then it'll resume the VMs. This process works with vSphere, base vSphere, as well as vSphere with Tanzu, VSAN, and NSXT. Availability and efficiency are two of the biggest advantages that vSphere offers our customers. Nearly every feature in vSphere is designed to mitigate risk in some way. We don't talk about that very often, but it's true. Everything is a risk management play in vSphere. The efficiency, too, of having a purpose-built ESXi hypervisor, the efficiency of ESXi is second to none. And the second and third order savings from having a low overhead, efficient hypervisor are absolutely enormous. Especially in my world of security, we have a joke, it's kind of an adaptation of the storage joke. What's the best I/O? Well, it's the one you didn't have to do. What's the easiest thing to secure? The thing that doesn't exist, right? So having efficiency gains such that you didn't need extra hardware, huge. vSphere 7 Update 1, we added DRS and HA support for workloads using GPUs. DRS, you can't vMotion those workloads yet unless you're using Bitfusion, but you can automatically place them and restart them if something happens to the host. In this release, we took a look at those same things for workloads that are using persistent memory, or PMEM, the non-volatile DIMM capabilities. Persistent memory is a technology that puts this non-volatile memory right. It's basically storage that sits in the system as a DIMM. It sits right on the memory bus. And use of this persistent memory technology can be a really huge performance improvement for a lot of workloads. As we ease operational support for some of these workloads, we can allow them to recover if something happens to a host. This requires the newest VM hardware. There's a VMware hardware version 19. And it needs to be enabled on a per VM basis. We can't turn it on universally because, as you might expect, the data stored in persistent memory on a host won't be available if the workload is moved somewhere else. So it's an application design consideration. Some applications use non-volatile storage like this as persistent memory as a cache, and that works out well. Some use it for other things, and it shouldn't be turned on there. But it's nice to have the choice, and that flexibility is huge. I mentioned here that nearly every feature in vSphere works to mitigate risk, and the best one for outage avoidance has, since 2006, and I'm feeling very old saying that, is vMotion. vMotion got a major overhaul in vSphere 7, and now Update 2 actually improves it further. Better support for fast modern networks, the 25, 40, and 100 gig networks that a lot of our customers are starting to use, especially with big hosts. The auto-tuning, the auto-scaling means that vSphere admins don't have to do manual tuning anymore for their vMotion setups. Massive improvement for environments with big hosts. Everybody else benefits too, just like the improvements to vSphere. When we make a change to the technology, everybody benefits. Best yet, and to borrow the cliche, it's enabled out of the box. You upgrade to Update 2, and to the extent we have a box, it's enabled out of it. So that's really nice. Update to this and you get it automatically. Speaking of things that you get automatically when you update to vSphere 7 Update 2, we talked earlier about AMD SEVS and using that technology to improve the security of containers. We're continuing always to work to improve the performance and supportability of vSphere on all of our hardware platforms, AMD, Intel, and the like. As you might expect, though, AMD CPUs are not identical to Intel CPUs. They've got different architectures, they have different cache sizes and layouts, they have different I/O buses and speeds, different power management techniques, so on and so forth. As more customers are using AMD systems, they're running more workloads on them, and we're learning more about how best to support those workloads. Update 2 introduces some pretty serious improvements to the way our CPU schedulers move workloads around on AMD CPUs, and that turns into absolutely enormous performance gains. You might say, well, how enormous, Bob? Well, your mileage will vary. All workloads are different, but we're really positive about this. And who doesn't like performance improvements, right? Update to Update 2, and you'll get them automatically. VMware is doing a lot of work to help telcos support their 5G deployments. Telco workloads are significantly different than most enterprise workloads because they're real-time, what they call real-time. The low latency and predictable, consistent latency is really important to real-time workloads. Update 2 helps with that. It significantly improves I/O latency and reduces jitter through NIC, the pass-through NIC configurations. Jitter is variable latency, and that's not welcome. As with, like we were just saying, as with most other improvements, if you've got workloads that are using NIC pass-through, they will benefit as well. Security and compliance. Big release here, vSphere 7 Update 2 for security and compliance. We've heard a lot about security and compliance in the news. And new threats emerging, and new guidance coming out. We really need to be thinking about how we're doing this and returning to a lot of the core principles of information security. So to help with that, we've got some new stuff coming out in vSphere 7 Update 2. Really thinking about how we can make security easy to use. How do we make our products more secure by default? And some good answers here. First, the introduction of something we call key persistence. It's the ability to use a trusted platform module, or a TPM, on a host to store secrets. A TPM it's just a small chip inside of a server. To configure a server with it, it's $40 US plus, give or take a little. And these things, they store secrets securely. I have an iPhone. You might have an iPhone as well. My iPhone, all new iPhones for the last few generations, have what's known as a secure enclave in them. That secure enclave stores your fingerprint, your Face ID information, all kinds of stuff. And you hear about them once in a while. In the news, people can't get secrets back out of them because of the secure enclave. A TPM is exactly that for a server. It's a secure enclave for a server. And we really strongly recommend that you get a TPM installed in all of your servers moving forward. It's a really inexpensive way to get a lot of advanced security. Using a TPM to store encryption keys means that we can reduce or eliminate the possibility of a dependency loop. in certain configurations. It means some interesting things about it being able to encrypt VMs without vCenter server on standalone hosts, being able to encrypt vCenter server as well, so keep your eyes open for some new content. Core.vmware.com is where we're doing a lot of our technical marketing, tech notes and things like that. Keep your eyes open for more news in that. I need to get into the lab with it, frankly. vSphere's got some pretty heavy-duty data at rest protections that have been around for several major versions now. VSAN encryption, VM encryption, virtual TPMs for workloads. One of the gotchas with that is that customers need a third-party key provider to enable those features. These are traditionally known as KMSs or key management services. There are inexpensive KMSs out there, but and cost is usually not the issue. It's complexity. They add dependencies and complexity to protecting data and all that. And we ask customers, a lot of our customers are using these data at rest protections and have them set up and are very happy with them. But we asked a lot of our customers, why aren't you using this stuff? And they said, well, Bob, it could be easier. And so we took a look. How do we do that? vSphere Native Key Provider is our answer to that. Introduces the ability to store and manage encryption keys through vCenter server and a clustered an ESXi cluster, a vSphere cluster itself. It offers a flexible option for customers who want to improve security but don't want to add complexity of an external KMS. It's really worth noting there are use cases for this. Sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes it's not, and you really need to think about threats when you're looking at this stuff. But one of the first things that we want to point out is that this feature is not a KMS itself. vCenter server cannot serve as a KMS for external storage arrays, for tape drives, for other systems. And so if you're in that situation, you may still need to employ an external key provider, an external KMS. Likewise, if you've got high security needs, strict company policies, that sort of stuff. But in general, customers that need this stuff are already doing it. And so for the rest of everyone else, they can improve their security, their data at rest protections by using this feature and enabling the encryption technologies. We talked a lot about lifecycle earlier, but we're a software company, right? We're always focused on software lifecycle. This might come as news to some, and certainly don't tell my aging lab equipment, but hardware's got a lifecycle too. Customers want to dispose of equipment. They want to repurpose it to different projects, different security levels, things like that. There's also the idea that sometimes things like boot volumes failing, and customers needing to send them back for warranty replacement. SSDs, the over-provisioning and the wear leveling in SSDs make it tricky to sanitize them. All of that stuff adds up to trouble for the life cycle of hardware. How do you make sure your data is securely disposed of? Big customers have really formal hardware sanitization programs, data and device destruction methods, that sort of thing. But small and medium-sized customers and edge computing, a lot of those don't have the same things available to them. So what can we do to help everyone protect themselves? Well, ESXi configuration encryption now protects the secrets automatically when you update to update 2. That is confusing. When you upgrade to vSphere 7 Update 2, you get configuration encryption automatically. And if you have a hardware TPM, it will seal the encryption with secrets in the hardware TPM for additional security. So we've been talking a lot about security features. How do you know what security features to enable? And then when you're enabling them, how do you know what to set them to? Even more complicated, how, as a vSphere admin, would you explain this to a compliance auditor? Compliance is a reality for a lot of our customers, and a necessary one if you want to take credit cards or operate a power plant or do healthcare, that sort of thing. And so how do you explain that to compliance auditors? Because compliance auditors don't know the first thing about vSphere, and it's not their job to, frankly. This vSphere Security Configuration Guide is a baseline that we publish for vSphere itself. It's been around for quite a number of years, but we're really starting it with vSphere 7. We're starting to evolve it into more prescriptive system design guidance as well. There's an update a few weeks ago. There will be an update in the near future to reflect vSphere 7 Update 2. And I mentioned earlier that security is always a trade-off. It's always a trade-off with usability, budget, staff time, that sort of thing. And so there's a lot of security advice out on the internet that doesn't really acknowledge that trade-off. But in contrast, we're really trying to do that. We're really trying to provide high quality, high return on investment advice for securing vSphere environments. That's also really respectful of a vSphere admin's time and effort. The SCG, though, the Security Configuration Guide, does not address compliance. To help with those areas, new product audit guides are being released, and those really bridge the gap between a vSphere admin and regulatory requirements. Regulatory frameworks always tell you what you need to do, but they don't tell you how. An implementation guide, the SCG is an implementation guide. Some of the more famous ones are like DISA-STIGs, that sort of thing. They tell you what you need to do, but they don't tell you why you need to do it. And nothing connects the dots between the regulations and the implementation, except now for the product audit guides and the compliance kits that are coming out. And so these are really helpful to explain how a security control in vSphere maps to a regulatory requirement, and really helps auditors understand what a vSphere admin has done, and really helps vSphere admins get the process done faster and get back to their normal work. Last, and this is probably the biggest piece of product news on this slide, is that vCenter server services have been validated against FIPS 140-2. We do a lot of compliance testing internal to the products as well, so that makes it easier for you to be compliant. A software-defined data center isn't an end unto itself, right? It's a means to do other things, and those other things usually show up in the form of workloads. So let's talk about what we're doing directly for workloads, some of the improvements to guest OS support and VMware tools. First, continuing just briefly with the security trend here, now that it's super easy to enable encryption by using native key provider, we can easily add virtual TPMs as well. A virtual TPM is just a virtual version of the Trusted Platform Module. It's a Trusted Platform Module 2.0 compliant virtual device. It should be noted that the virtual TPM, it's a good time to talk about this, in fact, the virtual TPM has got absolutely nothing to do with a physical TPM. A physical TPM is used exclusively by ESXi and can't be used by a VM. In fact, you wouldn't want to, we don't want a workload to store a secret on a host where if something happened to that host, you would lose the secret, right? If the host had a vMotion or something. So, we virtualized to solve that problem. We virtualized the TPM, and true to form, being VMware, we called it vTPM. Relies on VM encryption to keep the secrets it stores safe. And that also means that it's got nothing to do, you don't need physical hardware TPMs to have virtual TPMs. What you do need is a key provider, and that's why native key provider is so important in this context. vTPM has been around for a while, but it only appeared if you were running very particular versions of Microsoft Windows. We've loosened that up a bit. We're doing better testing around it now. And so customers, we actually asked customers, why aren't you using this? And we discovered that some customers were switching their Linux VMs to Windows, adding a TPM, and then switching them back. Well, we can help you with that. And so certain popular major Linux distributions and more Windows options are available now. One of the problems that many of our customers have is managing content and configurations at scale. How do you keep a fleet of VMs in sync with their VM tools configurations, some sysadmin scripts, maybe you want some utilities? Larger organizations solve this with additional tools, but every tool you introduce into an environment is an application unto itself. It needs care and feeding, it needs patching and security, it needs updates, all of that stuff. And can we help with that? Well, the answer is yes. So you might have noticed a big theme for us being, can we make this easier? That's really what the VMware Tools team has been thinking about here. And they've created a feature called Guest Store, Guest Content Distribution, that enables customers to distribute content to VMs through vSphere itself. It's been accurately described as an internal content distribution network. A customer, you can set it up using any type of shared data store. It's got flexible and granular access policies to control participation as well, both from the VM side and the vSphere sides of things. vSphere 7 introduced PTP support, Precision Time Protocol. That's sub-millisecond accuracy for time synchronization. It's really important to financial customers of ours. scientific customers. There's a lot of folks that are very interested in this. As part of the PTP support, VMs at hardware version 18 or newer, hardware version 18 and 19 as of this video, have a precision clock device that's available to them. You can just add it as a piece of hardware. And that's a low latency time synchronization device for guest OSs. VMware Tools now, the Windows VMware Tools installer will offer to, if you do a custom install, will offer to add a VMware time provider that the Windows time service can use directly. It's supported on Windows 10, Windows Server 2016, 2019, and 2022 when it comes out. And it makes this feature really easy to use. It's also worth noting the Linux support. We're upstreaming the Linux drivers for the precision clock device into the Linux kernel. And while that process happens, there's a driver that's available on flings.vmware.com. It's worth checking out flings.vmware.com. There's some really interesting stuff out there. But drivers for the precision clock device on Linux, flings.vmware.com. Ecosystem. One of the biggest strengths of VMware Solutions is really the large ecosystem that we have. And we're really proud of that, and we really appreciate our partners and all of the people that build things to work with vSphere. Tending to that is really important as part of our release. One of the best things about vSphere 7 was its commitment to APIs. It took not full API coverage to almost complete full coverage of vSphere functions with APIs. And as these APIs evolve, our techniques for delivering them also evolve. And so moving forward, the old REST APIs are deprecated, and the new ones are at /API. So /REST deprecated /API, the new hotness. So what does this mean? When we say that something's deprecated, like vSphere 7 said that integrated Windows authentication is deprecated, what does that mean? Well, that means that a feature won't be supported in a future major version. So we only deprecate things officially at major versions. So when we say there's no immediate impact, let's take a look at that. That means that the next major version of vSphere will officially deprecate it, and then the major version after that will finally remove it. So we've got years. But we hope it doesn't take you years. If you're a person that uses APIs, please consider using the new ones. They've been simplified, they've been streamlined, so they should be easier to use. The last thing that I want to mention in the ecosystem right now is that there are some new bundles available that include Carbon Black Workload, the cloud workload tools, and next generation antivirus. These are pretty exciting. I really like Carbon Black Workload. It can look inside guest workloads, inside the guest OSs, to determine vulnerabilities, to scan for vulnerabilities and help InfoSec and vSphere admins and workload admins really prioritize risk, really prioritize patching, that sort of thing. And the increased visibility, it's really nice. I wish this was around when I was a customer. So let's wrap this up. This presentation covered a lot of our new features, but realistically, it only covered it covered maybe 20 to 25 new features. There are over 90 big and medium-sized features that got added to vSphere, and hundreds of little cleanups, little improvements. Our UX designers just making things a little bit easier on a continuous basis, and we're really proud of that. And so we hope that you seriously consider upgrading to vSphere 7 Update 2. Please do so. And if you want more information about our technical capabilities in that, you can visit the technical marketing teams at core.vmware.com. We joined forces last summer and created a new site for ourselves based on the tech zone models of things. So other resources available we've got a blog, a technical only blog starting on core.vmware.com. Our venerable vSphere blog is still there. It just got a facelift. It looks a lot nicer now. And our YouTube channel, which you might be seeing this on here. But if you're not seeing it directly, feel free to go out to our YouTube channel. And at the risk of sounding like a YouTube person or whatever, you can, if you click the bell, you'll be notified when we post new videos. So thank you very much. We really appreciate you having being our customer, you having joined us here. and let us know what we can help you with. We really appreciate feedback, and especially vSphere 7. The vSphere 7 client has got a feedback mechanism. I think in the upper right-hand corner, that smiley face emoji, if you click on it, you can actually give us feedback directly in the product. So if something hits you, you want to tell us something, that's a great way to do it, and we read all of those. Thank you very much, and take care of yourselves.